The psychology of people who forgive too easily. Have you ever met one of them? They are the saints of our social world, the masters of the turned cheek, the silent, absorbent presences in any room where a hurt has occurred. You have seen them betrayed, you have seen them insulted, you have seen them wronged in ways that would send any normal person into a righteous fury. And you have watched, with a mixture of awe and profound, disquieting confusion, as they perform a strange and almost instantaneous act of psychological alchemy. They do not rage, they do not demand justice, they do not hold a grudge, they simply forgive. Their forgiveness is a soft, warm, and seemingly endless blanket, thrown over the sharp and jagged edges of every human transgression. You have likely looked at this person with a sense of profound and often humbled admiration. You see their capacity to forgive as a sign of their immense spiritual and emotional maturity. You see their refusal to hold a grudge as a testament to their deep well of compassion. You see their relentless niceness in the face of cruelty as a form of almost superhuman strength. You have been taught by all the sacred texts of our culture that to forgive is divine, and you see in this person the very embodiment of that divinity. You see them as a moral and spiritual superior, a beacon of light in a dark and unforgiving world. But what if you are wrong? What if their forgiveness is not a sign of their spiritual advancement, but a symptom of a profound and hidden wound? What if their compassion is not a virtue, but a sophisticated and deeply ingrained survival strategy? What if they are not the ones who are free from the prison of resentment, but are, in fact, trapped in a different and far more insidious prison of their own making? The brutal and uncomfortable truth is that the person who forgives too easily is not a saint. They are a person who is living in a state of profound and terrifying fear. Their forgiveness is not a choice, it is a cage. And their refusal to hold you accountable is not a sign of their strength. It is the heartbreaking and eloquent expression of a deep and ancient terror that a single, necessary act of judgment could lead to their own annihilation. The primal wound, the crime of having a boundary. To understand the psychology of the person who forgives too easily, you must first understand that this is not a personality preference. It is a trauma response. The compulsion to forgive is a learned behavior, a lesson that was seared into their nervous system in the first and most formative classroom of their life, their own childhood. This is not a person who is choosing to forgive. This is a person who has learned on a cellular level that they do not have the right not to. This is the child who grew up in an environment where their own healthy, self-protective anger was a crime. This may have been an environment of overt and terrifying abuse. They grew up with a volatile, angry, or narcissistic parent where any expression of their own hurt, any attempt to set a boundary, was met with a terrifying and unpredictable wrath. They learned with the brutal and unforgettable clarity of a traumatic lesson that to be angry is to be unsafe. To hold someone accountable for their actions is to risk a catastrophic and annihilating retaliation. The only safe and rational response to being hurt was to immediately, and with a convincing performance of sincerity, forgive the perpetrator. Their forgiveness was not an act of grace, it was a preemptive surrender, a desperate and brilliant strategy for de-escalating a threat and surviving the moment. Or, and perhaps even more insidiously, this may have been an environment of profound and terrible emotional enmeshment. This is the child of the fragile, anxious, or depressed parent, for whom the child's anger was not a threat, but a wound. To express their hurt was to risk the complete and total emotional collapse of the very person they depended on for their survival. The child learned a lesson that was, in many ways, even more profound than that of the abused child. My anger is a weapon that hurts the people I love. My boundaries are a form of cruelty. To be a good and loving person, I must have no anger, no boundaries, no self. I must absorb all the pain. I must be the endless and unconditional container for the other person's reality. In both of these scenarios, the child, in a brilliant and desperate act of psychological survival, makes a vow. It is a silent, unconscious, and life-defining vow. I will never be angry. I will always forgive. They take the entire, beautiful, and essential apparatus of their own healthy aggression, their boundaries, their no, their capacity to stand for their own truth, their sacred and self-protective anger, and they lock it away in the deepest, darkest, and most inaccessible dungeon of their own psyche. This is the birth of the pathological forgiver. They become an expert at rationalizing away the bad behavior of others, at seeing their side, at finding a way to make it their own fault. This is not a choice, it is a necessity. It is the only way to survive in a world that has taught them that forgiveness is not a gift they can choose to give, but a tax they are required to pay for their own existence. The architecture of the martyr, the psychology of the forgiving self. As this child grows into an adult, this early survival strategy solidifies into a rigid and deeply entrenched psychological structure. Their inner world is not that of a normal adult. It is a courtroom where they are perpetually on trial and perpetually found guilty. To understand their behavior, you must understand the core tenets of their internal operating system, the unconscious laws that govern their every move. The first and most fundamental tenet is a profound and terrifying fear of their own anger. The person who forgives too easily is not a person without anger. In fact, they are often a person who is seething with a vast, unconscious and unexpressed rage. But they are terrified of this rage. They have learned from their earliest moments that their anger is a destructive and catastrophic force, that it is the thing that will cause them to be punished, to be abandoned, to be unloved. They see their own anger not as a healthy and necessary part of their own humanity, but as a demonic force, a monster in their own psychic basement. Their compulsive forgiveness is a desperate attempt to keep this monster locked away. They forgive you quickly and completely, not because they are not hurt, but because to acknowledge the hurt, to feel the anger, would be to risk unleashing a part of themselves that they are convinced will destroy everything they hold dear. The second tenet is a complete and total identification with the role of the good and understanding person. The healthy mind understands that goodness is not a static state, but a dynamic and often paradoxical process. It involves both compassion and judgment, both forgiveness and accountability. For the person who forgives too easily, goodness is a rigid and one-dimensional performance. Their entire identity, their persona, is built around the role of the saint, the martyr, the endlessly compassionate one. To not forgive, to hold a grudge, to set a boundary, these are not just actions, they are threats to their very identity. An act of holding someone accountable would be for them an admission that they are not, in fact, the good person they have spent their entire life trying to be. And for a person whose entire sense of self is built on this fragile foundation, that admission is an existential terror. The third and most poignant tenet is a profound and deeply ingrained belief in their own unworthiness. The person who forgives too easily is a person who, on a deep and often unconscious level, does not believe they have the right to be angry. They do not believe they have the right to not be hurt. They have so internalized the message that their own needs and feelings are unimportant that they have come to see the bad behavior of others not as a violation, but as their due. Their forgiveness is a form of self-erasure. It is a quiet and heartbreaking statement that says, "Your right to hurt me is greater than my right to be angry about it. Your needs are real, mine are not." They are a person who has, on the deepest level, agreed to be a supporting character in everyone else's movie, a ghost in their own life, the shadow of the saint, the inevitable return of the repressed rage. The psyche, however, as Carl Jung so brilliantly demonstrated, has a way of seeking wholeness. It is a self-regulating system that will not tolerate a state of profound imbalance forever. The healthy aggression, the sacred anger, the capacity for judgment that you have buried alive does not die. It goes into the shadow, the unconscious basement of your mind, and from there it wages a silent and often devastating war against the saintly, forgiving adult you have become. The more you identify with your light, compassionate persona, the more powerful, chaotic, and destructive your repressed aggression becomes. This is the source of the baffling and deeply shameful self-sabotage that so often plagues the life of the person who forgives too easily. You see it in the person who is endlessly forgiving to others, but who is a ruthless and unforgiving tyrant to themselves. They are afflicted with a vicious inner critic, a constant internal barrage of self-hatred and shame. This is the anger that cannot be directed outward at its legitimate target, and so it turns inward against the self. You also see it in their physical bodies. The person who cannot say no with their mouth will often have their body say no for them. They are prone to chronic illnesses, to autoimmune disorders, to migraines, to 1,000 different physical symptoms that are, in their own way, the body's desperate and symbolic expression of a rage that the conscious mind has refused to feel. Their illness is their anger made flesh, and most terrifyingly, you see it in the sudden, inexplicable, and often catastrophic implosion of their lives. The person who has spent a lifetime forgiving, of absorbing the pain, of being the good one, will sometimes, seemingly out of nowhere, snap. They will leave their marriage, they will quit their job, they will have a nervous breakdown. This is not a sudden madness. It is the pressure cooker of a lifetime of suppressed resentments finally blowing its lid. It is the shadow, the exiled and enraged part of the soul, finally rising up and burning the entire inauthentic house to the ground. The path of the sacred no, the courage to embrace the whole self. How does this person ever find their way back to wholeness? The path of healing for the person who forgives too easily is a long, arduous, and profoundly counterintuitive journey. It is not about learning to be nicer or more spiritual. In fact, it is the exact opposite. It is the sacred and terrifying work of learning to be selfish, to be judgmental, to be unforgiving, and to finally, for the first time, allow the buried and beautiful monster of their own healthy anger to come out into the light. The first step on this path is a radical and compassionate acknowledgement of the wound. You must be willing to look back at your own childhood, not with the adult's rationalizing, defending mind, "It wasn't that bad, my parents did their best," but with the child's honest, feeling heart. You must be willing to grieve for the safety you never had. You must allow yourself to feel the profound anger and sadness for the fear that has shaped your entire life. This is not about blaming your parents. It is about validating your own experience. It is about finally giving your inner child the one thing they have always been denied, the acknowledgement that their fear was real, that the environment was unsafe, and that their strategy of self-erasure was a brilliant and necessary act of survival. The second step is the conscious and deliberate journey of reclaiming your anger. You have spent your entire life as an expert on compassion. You must now become a beginner in the sacred and necessary art of anger. This does not mean becoming an angry person. It means learning to feel the clean, pure, and life-giving energy of your own self-protective rage. It means, in a safe and contained way, finally allowing yourself to feel the no that you were never allowed to feel. It means hitting a pillow. It means screaming in your car. It means writing a letter to the people who hurt you that you will never send. It means learning that your anger is not a destructive monster. It is a sacred guardian, a loyal and powerful friend who has been waiting in the basement your entire life for you to come and set it free. Finally, and most terrifyingly, you must begin to practice small, courageous acts of non-forgiveness. You must learn to set boundaries. You must learn to hold people accountable for their actions. This does not mean holding a grudge. It means recognizing that some actions have consequences and that it is not your job to absorb those consequences for the other person. It means saying with a quiet and unshakable clarity, "What you did was not okay, and I will not pretend that it was." It means risking the possibility that the other person will be angry, that they will disapprove. And it means discovering in the miraculous and healing moments when the world does not in fact end, that your own sovereign truth is a safe and beautiful thing to stand in. The emergence of true forgiveness, the power of the integrated self. What is the result of this difficult, sacred work? What happens when the pathological forgiver finally excavates, embraces, and integrates their inner warrior? They do not become an angry, bitter, and unforgiving person. On the contrary, they become truly capable of forgiveness for the first time in their lives. True forgiveness is not a compulsive, fear-based, and self-erasing act of submission. It is a conscious, deliberate, and sovereign act of power. It is a choice that can only be made by a person who knows that they have the right not to forgive. It is a gift that can only be given by a person who is in full possession of their own anger, their own boundaries, and their own unshakable sense of self. The healthy aggression that was once a feared and demonic force in the shadow becomes a beautiful and life-giving tool. The ability to say no becomes the ability to create a safe and sacred container for your own life and to protect the things you love. The ability to be angry becomes the ability to fight for justice, for truth, for the protection of the innocent. They have not become a monster, they have become whole. And in that wholeness they have found a form of strength, a form of peace, and a form of freedom that the old, good self, in its lonely and terrified prison, could never have possibly imagined. The saint has revealed itself to be a human being, and that is a far more powerful, far more beautiful, and far more courageous thing to be. If you recognize this prison within yourself, know this: the warrior you abandoned in the basement of your psyche is still waiting for you. They have not given up hope. They are waiting for you to put down the olive branch, to turn around, to walk down the stairs, and to finally, and with great courage, pick up the sacred and life-giving sword of your own authentic anger.